Some places aren't just abandoned. They're alive. They breathe. And they remember what happened there. These are the ruins America tried to forget, but they never let go. Subscribe for more true stories that don't fade, even when the towns do. This is Roadside Tales. Case 1. Holmes's Murder Castle, Chicago, 1893. While most of the city was preparing to welcome millions of visitors for the World's Columbian Exposition, the Great World's Fair celebrating progress and modern marvels on the south side of the city, a very different kind of structure was quietly nearing completion. It wasn't a marvel. It wasn't even on the map. To the casual eye, it looked like an ordinary hotel. 3 stories, dozens of rooms, a pharmacy on the first floor. But this building wasn't meant to host travelers. It was meant to trap them. Its builder was a man named H. Holmes, born Herman Webster Mudgett. He was educated, charming, and well-dressed, a doctor, a pharmacist, and a fraud. But beneath the polished exterior, Holmes was something else entirely. Not just a con man, not just a killer. He was a designer of death. He bought the lot at 63rd and Wallace Street in the late 1880s and immediately began constructing his vision. But Holmes didn't want anyone to know what he was really building. So he played a game, hiring and firing workers, constantly switching architects and using false names. No single person ever saw the full blueprint. Only Holmes knew the truth. What rose from the ground was a 3-story labyrinth later called the Murder Castle. The first floor held a pharmacy storefront and Holmes's office. But upstairs was where things got strange. Hallways that led nowhere, staircases that ended at blank walls, rooms with no windows, secret passageways, false doors, hidden chutes. Some rooms were lined with asbestos and sealed airtight, outfitted with gas lines Holmes could control from a hidden panel in his office. Others were soundproofed entirely. There were peepholes drilled into the walls, trapdoors in the floors, disorienting angles, hallways that looped in circles. The entire building was designed to confuse, isolate, and contain. When the 1893 World's Fair opened, millions poured into Chicago. Young women especially came from rural towns looking for opportunity. Many needed jobs or places to stay. Holmes offered both. He hired them for his pharmacy. He invited them to lodge at his hotel. He even charmed some into short relationships. Always polite, always respectful, always in control. And then, they vanished. Some left behind trunks, letters, half-finished dresses. Most didn't have family nearby to raise alarm. And even when suspicions were raised, Holmes had explanations. She took another job. She ran off with a man. She never showed up. His charm was disarming, his confidence absolute. Behind locked doors in the hidden rooms of his castle, something horrific was happening. To this day, no one knows exactly how many people Holmes killed. He confessed to 27 murders, though some of those were later disproven or contradicted. Some estimates range as high as 200. What's clear is that he had opportunity, means, and a building engineered to kill silently. The castle's basement held the most terrifying evidence. Police would later uncover vats of acid, a stretching rack, a dissecting table, a crematorium, barrels of quicklime, piles of bones too small to belong to adults. Holmes had turned the basement into a death lab, dissolving bodies, stripping flesh, and in some cases selling skeletons to medical schools under fake names. Death was just another business. Holmes also profited from insurance fraud. He would convince associates to take out life insurance policies and name him as the beneficiary. Then, they'd disappear. He forged signatures, created fake identities, married multiple women without ever divorcing. In every case, Holmes exploited trust, then erased the person behind it. His downfall came not in Chicago, but in Philadelphia. In 1894, authorities caught up with him after a botched insurance scheme involving the murder of his associate Benjamin Pitezel. Holmes had killed Pitezel and then taken his 3 children across the country, only to murder two of them in a rented house in Indianapolis. It was that case that finally caught national attention. When police returned to Chicago and searched the castle, they found a house of horrors. Local newspapers ran stories almost daily. Reporters dubbed him the Beast of Chicago. The public was stunned. This wasn't a maniac hiding in shadows. This was a man with a mustache and a medical degree who had designed a building to kill. Holmes stood trial in 1895. He was calm, articulate, and eerily unbothered. He admitted to some killings, lied about others, smiled through testimony. He was convicted and sentenced to death. Before his execution, Holmes requested something unusual, that his coffin be filled with cement and buried 10 feet deep. He feared grave robbers or perhaps vengeance from beyond. Whatever the reason, the state granted it. He was hanged in 1896. It took over 15 minutes for him to die. After Holmes's death, the murder castle remained. In 1895, a mysterious fire broke out and destroyed part of the upper floors. The building was eventually demolished in the 1930s. Today, a U.S. post office stands on the land. But the story doesn't end there. Employees at the post office have reported strange noises, cold spots, a feeling of being watched. Some refuse to go into the basement alone. The government doesn't officially recognize any haunting, but those who've worked there tell a different story. The legacy of Holmes is more than murder. It's architecture as evil. A building not just used for killing, but designed for it. Every hallway, every trapdoor, every gas line. His crimes weren't crimes of rage. They were blueprinted, calculated, efficient. What terrifies people most isn't just what Holmes did. It's that he built a place to do it, and the people came to him smiling, unsuspecting, walking willingly into his design. Today, there's nothing left of the murder castle but photographs and stories. But the idea of a building made for death, still chills the spine. No shadows, no ghosts screaming down hallways, just a blueprint with one purpose: to make people disappear. Case 2. Pennhurst State School. Where the walls remember. In the woods outside Spring City, Pennsylvania, the trees still grow tall and quiet, but they don't block out the past. Just beyond the tree line lies a massive complex of crumbling brick buildings. Windows shattered, paint peeling from the walls, vines creeping into doorways that haven't been opened in decades. This is what remains of Pennhurst State School and Hospital. From the outside, it looks like any other abandoned institution. But Pennhurst is different, because here the walls don't just remember the people who lived inside them, they remember how they suffered. Pennhurst opened its doors in 1908 under a longer name, the Eastern Pennsylvania State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. It was built during a time when mental health care was still in the dark ages, when people with disabilities, mental illness, or even just behavioral issues were locked away from society, often permanently. The original plan was hopeful, a self-sustaining campus with dorms, classrooms, medical wings, and workshops where residents could live with dignity. But that dream crumbled fast. Within a few years, the facility was overwhelmed. Too many patients, not enough staff, and a society that wanted to forget the people sent there. By the 1920s, Pennhurst had become something else, a warehouse for the unwanted. Children born with Down syndrome, adults with schizophrenia, teenagers with learning disabilities, even orphans or runaways labeled unmanageable were committed by courts or families. Some never belonged there at all. Others were left and simply never picked up. Inside conditions were brutal. Staff reports and investigations later revealed rooms so overcrowded that patients slept head to toe on the floor. Many weren't toilet trained because no one taught them. Diapers were reused. Sanitation was nearly non-existent. Some residents were left naked. Others were tied to beds. Physical abuse wasn't just common, it was routine. Punishments included beatings, forced isolation, and in some cases, experimental treatments without consent. Doctors sterilized patients without family knowledge. Electric shock was used liberally. Some residents were subjected to behavioral modification tactics that bordered on torture. Screaming was constant. Restraints were everywhere, and death. It came quietly, often undocumented. In 1968, a young television journalist named Bill Baldini aired a 5-part exposé called Suffer the Little Children. The series pulled back the veil on Pennhurst. What viewers saw was shocking patients rocking back and forth in filth, children crying in barren rooms, staff treating people like animals. America couldn't look away. Public outrage followed, but it took years before anything changed. In 1977, a federal lawsuit, Halderman versus Pennhurst, challenged the institution's entire existence. The court found that Pennhurst had violated the constitutional rights of its residents. In 1986, after nearly 80 years in operation, the order came down: Pennhurst was to be closed. But by then, the damage was done. Thousands had lived and died inside those walls. After the closure, the buildings were simply left. No redevelopment, no demolition, just silence. Over time, nature crept back in. Trees surrounded the buildings, mold claimed the ceilings, wheelchairs rusted in corners, patient records were found scattered on the floor, beds still made, straps still attached. And then, the stories began. Locals whispered that they heard screams coming from the grounds at night. Visitors reported cold spots in sealed rooms. Paranormal investigators caught shadowy figures darting down hallways. One group claimed they recorded the voice of a child whispering, "Don't leave me here." In one wing, several people described hearing the rattling of bed frames, metal beds that no longer existed. In another, security cameras captured a figure passing across a hallway only to vanish through a wall. No one could identify it. Skeptics say it's just the power of suggestion, that an abandoned asylum will always feel haunted. But those who've spent time in Pennhurst often don't return. The stories are too consistent, the atmosphere too thick. Even law enforcement have hesitated to step foot in the deeper wings after dark. Some officers reported radios going dead, lights cutting out. And one said he heard footsteps echoing from behind, but when he turned, the hallway was empty, stretching out like a tunnel with no end. Today, parts of Pennhurst have been turned into a haunted attraction open during Halloween. But not all of it. There are still wings untouched, sealed. The owners don't talk about what's in them, and the cameras don't point in that direction. In a legal sense, Pennhurst is no longer an institution, but its soul never really left. People still find medical records scattered across the floor files with real names, diagnoses, and dates of death. Some bring them to staff. Others leave them where they are, as if the place might notice their absence. What makes Pennhurst terrifying isn't just the neglect. It's the intention. This was a place built to help, a place meant to care. But somewhere along the way, the mission warped. The institution became a machine efficient in how it separated people from the outside world and in how it erased their individuality. You won't find gory horror stories in Pennhurst. What you'll find are traces: a sock under a bed, a child's name carved into a window frame, a strap bolted to a rusted gurney. And when you stand in those rooms, it's not what you see that chills you. It's what you don't. Pennhurst doesn't scream. It waits. And when it stares back at you through broken windows and crumbling brick, it doesn't ask for fear. It demands remembrance. Case 3. Centralia, the town that's still burning. Beneath the quiet hills of Pennsylvania, something is burning. Not in the open, not in a way you can see, but deep underground, beneath empty streets and crumbling sidewalks, a fire has been smoldering for over 60 years. The town above it mostly gone. What remains is called Centralia, a place that looks like time forgot it. Abandoned houses overtaken by weeds. A church on a hill still standing while the homes around it have vanished. Long, cracked roads with no traffic. And from some of those cracks, smoke still rises. It isn't steam. It isn't fog. It's the breath of a fire that never went out. This is not a ghost town built from myth or legend. It's a ghost town built from fire. Centralia was once a thriving coal town founded in the mid-1800s and built around the anthracite mines that ran beneath it. For over a century, families lived, worked, and worshipped here. Kids rode their bikes down the alleys. Businesses lined the main street. The mines provided steady work and powered an entire way of life. That changed in 1962. Just before Memorial Day, the town council decided to clean up an illegal landfill in an abandoned mine pit on the edge of town. Their solution was simple: set it on fire. Controlled burns were common practice back then. The fire was supposed to burn up the trash and then fizzle out. But this fire didn't stop. Unbeknownst to officials, there was a hole in the pit, an old mine shaft that connected to a vast network of abandoned tunnels filled with coal seams. Once the flames reached that coal, the fire spread underground, lighting an invisible fuse that would never be extinguished. At first, no one realized what had happened. The ground stayed warm, a little too warm. Manhole covers steamed in winter. Vegetation died without warning. Strange odors drifted through basements. Then came the sinkholes. One day in 1981, a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was playing in his backyard when the ground beneath him collapsed. A sinkhole had opened without warning, more than 4 feet wide and nearly 100 feet deep. He managed to grab onto a tree root and screamed for help. His cousin pulled him out just in time. The hole had released a burst of hot, poisonous gas. That moment changed everything. The danger was no longer theoretical. Residents began to realize the town was sitting on top of a slow-motion disaster. Carbon monoxide levels rose. Basements filled with toxic air. Roads warped from below. People started to leave. Some were relocated by the government. Others refused. Lawsuits followed. So did warnings. In 1984, Congress approved over $40 million to buy out and relocate residents. Nearly everyone accepted. By 1992, the state used eminent domain to claim most of the properties. Entire blocks were bulldozed. Holmes stores, even a school, flattened into grassy fields. By 2013, the U.S. Postal Service revoked Centralia's zip code. The town, for all official purposes, no longer existed. But here's the thing: the fire never stopped. Experts estimate it could keep burning for another 200 years. No one knows the exact path it takes underground. The coal veins twist through miles of rock. Sensors show heat and gas levels in unexpected places. It's like the earth beneath Centralia is alive and always shifting. And then there's the strangeness. Visitors to Centralia often describe an eerie silence. Birds don't sing. The wind seems muffled. Some have reported a low humming sound underfoot, like a machine rumbling in the deep. Others have claimed their compasses spin in circles. Cell signals cut out. Electronics behave strangely. And then there are the voices. A few urban explorers walking the old highway that leads into the heart of town say they've heard whispers, low, urgent, and directionless. One man claimed he heard a child's voice calling for help, but when he followed it, the voice moved, always staying just out of reach. There are no children in Centralia. Another group recorded what they believed was distant coughing echoing through a storm drain. When they played the audio back later, they heard something else, words they hadn't noticed at the time. One phrase repeated twice: "Don't dig." Skeptics call it pareidolia, your brain assigning meaning to random sounds. But even the skeptics don't stay after dark. There's a road in Centralia called Graffiti Highway, or at least there used to be. It was an old stretch of Route 61 closed off when the pavement buckled from the heat below. Over time, it became a canvas people spray-painted messages, artwork, and warnings across its broken surface. It looked like something out of an apocalyptic film. In 2020, the owners finally buried the road under mounds of dirt, but people still sneak in, and they still leave markings, cryptic drawings, names, and once a single sentence written in white paint. The fire isn't what's haunting this place. There's no record of who wrote it. The truth is, Centralia doesn't need ghosts. It is the ghost, not just of a town, but of a decision. A fire that was supposed to last a few hours. has lasted decades. The houses are gone. The streets reclaimed by grass. But the earth beneath is still alive, still burning, still watching. Some say Centralia is cursed. Others say it's just science. But either way, no one denies this. It's not done yet. Some places don't burn out. They just wait for someone to notice the silence. Subscribe if you're drawn to the stories that buildings never stop telling.